Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Meredith Hoskin. I am president of the City of Alameda Democratic Club. And we're really excited to have you all for our second in a series of candidate forums, local candidate forums, preparing us for the upcoming 2026 general election. We are the local organization chartered through the Democratic Party. So we like to meet with our local official or meet with the local candidates who are registered Democrats, get to know them. And then following this forum, our membership will vote on the candidates that they feel best reflect the Democratic Party values. One piece of business. We did have our ballot measure meeting originally scheduled for Wednesday, September 9th. That meeting has now moved to September 23rd. So just look for an email update on that in the next week or two. All right. All right. We are going to go ahead and get started. So as I meant, so interestingly, this is a forum. It's not a debate. Each candidate will give a 2-minute introduction. We'll launch into questions, allowing 90 seconds for responses, then a 1-minute closing. The candidates will want to look at my colleague and our fellow board member, Jen Heflin-Witt, who's spotlighted. She's going to be helping keep time. She will show a sign when there are 30 seconds left, and she will show a sign when your time is up. And you don't have to take the whole minute and 30 seconds, of course. We're eager to understand your perspective, your experience and understanding, and most importantly, your plans of action. Public education is a very core value of the Democratic Party and for Alamedans. So this race is of particular importance to the City of Alameda Democratic Club. And, you know, as an AUSD parent as well, I'm very eager to hear your positions. So two of the incumbents who were running had conflicts this evening, but we do have one, I believe, on the line from the airport. Current board president, Ryan Lalonde, who is running for re-election to a 2-year seat versus a 4-year. Ryan, are you there?
Hey there, sorry. I actually am in the airport.
Okay. All right. Is now a good time for you to give your 2-minute introduction?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. I apologize that I'm going to turn my video on so you guys can see that I'm a live person. But I apologize that I'm not there in person. I am flying to Michigan to be with my grandmother who's doing hospice at home right now to have a little special moment with her before everything happens. I just want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity. I'm not going to actually be on the ballot because I had no opponent, and I appreciate that. The district saves a lot of money by not having to run me on the ballot. I'm looking forward to hearing from the candidates and what they want to bring forward and things that they want to do while they're on the board. I want to thank you all for running the forum. When I ran in 2022, we didn't have this. So I wasn't able to get an endorsement. I did get it from the party, but not from the local club. They didn't focus on school board, so I appreciate that. And I'm going to put myself on mute for the rest and listen as much as I can, as I'm literally boarding in like a minute. But I did want everyone to know that, my focus and priorities are moving forward all the things that we've done. And in doing so, my focus is going to be on helping candidates that I think that are going to do that the best for us. And so I am supporting Malia, Tushan, Carrie, Gary, and Adriana Valencia for AC Transit. So thank you tonight.
Thank you. All right. And then I have a statement to read from the other incumbent, Gary Lim, who couldn't be here this evening due to a conflict. Good evening, Alameda Democrats. I want to thank you for the invitation, and I sincerely apologize that I cannot be with you tonight due to prior commitment. I am Gary Lim, a lifelong Alamedan and proud alumnus of our own Otis Elementary, Lincoln Middle School, Alameda High, and Encinal High. For the past 11 years, I have had the honor of serving on the Alameda School Board. Together, we have delivered historic progress, passing 2 facility bonds to build a new wood middle school, renovate historic Alameda High, and complete the new 700 building at Encinal, all on time and on budget. And in 2 years, a new Otis Elementary School. We have also passed several parcel taxes that have been essential in supporting our educational programs and maintaining competitive salaries for our teachers and staff. In addition, we negotiate a stable 3-year labor agreement with our teachers and classified staff, avoiding the deep cuts that have forced so many other districts to scale back, and we have maintained consistent positive budget certifications from the county. Looking ahead, my focus is on expanding career technical education pathways for our students. I established the AUSD Peralta Community College Subcommittee to strengthen this partnership, giving our students free access to college classes and industry credentials, reducing their future debt before they even graduate. I am deeply honored to have the endorsement of all my current colleagues on the board, our teachers, and our classified staff. I hope that I can count on your support to reelect me and to elect board member Carrie Hahnel, who was appointed to the board and is now running for her first full term. We are committed to continuing our collaborative student first leadership. Thank you. All right. And then with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the candidates with their introductions, 2 minutes each. Look at, you can keep an eye on Jen, and we are going to start with Joyce Boyd.
Great. Well, good evening and thank you for having me. I'm Joyce Boyd and I'm running for the Alameda School Board. My family and I have called Alameda home for 25 years. I've raised my children here and they attended Alameda Public Schools. My youngest just graduated from Alameda High School this year, and my grandson will be starting school here in a few years. I've spent more than 20 years volunteering in our schools, serving on PTAs, the Alameda PTA Council, School Site Council, and currently as chair of the Alameda School District Parcel Tax Oversight Committee. Professionally, I'm a CPA with a career focused on nonprofit affordable housing. I understand policy, budget, strategic planning, and the importance of using limited resources wisely. But my commitment to education is also personal. I grew up in Detroit, raised by a single mother on welfare. Public education and hard work gave me opportunities that changed my life. I was the first in my family to graduate from college. That's why I believe every child deserves the opportunity to succeed. As a school board member, my priorities are strong academic outcomes, supporting our teachers, responsible budgeting, safe and welcoming schools, and transparency with families. I want to strengthen reading and math instruction, provide early support for students who are struggling, and make sure students who are ready for more are challenged. I also want to help Alameda attract and retain excellent teachers and ensure our resources are focused where they matter most, the classroom. I'm running because I believe our schools are central to the strength of our community. I want to bring my experience as a parent, school volunteer, CPA, and community member to the school board. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. And then next up will be Carrie Hahnel.
Yeah, hi, good evening. I'm Carrie Hahnel, and I am running for Alameda School Board. I am an Alameda parent, a longtime volunteer with our schools, an education policy expert, and a currently serving board appointee. I'm running because I believe Alameda schools should provide an excellent education that prepares every student for college, careers, and a fulfilling life. I'm proud of our schools. I think we're a bright spot in the region. And at the same time, I know that we can do more to truly make Alameda a destination district and a system that provides the very best to every student. Professionally, I worked in education for more than 25 years as a researcher, an advocate, and a policy advisor. And in those roles, I've called for adequate and fair funding, for the dismantling of systemic inequities in schools, for clear standards and accountability, for high quality curriculum and instruction in reading, math, and also the arts, and also support for our educators who work so hard every day for our students. But my commitment to Alameda Schools is not just professional, it's also personal. I've had kids in the district since 2015. I've served on school site council. I've served for 7 years on the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee, and like Joyce was chair. And I volunteered on our last two parcel tax campaigns. And then last fall, I joined the school board as an appointee. On the board, I have focused on strong academic outcomes, particularly in early literacy and math, equitable opportunities for students, supporting our educators and staff, and making sure that we're really thoughtful stewards of our public resources. I'm committed to continuing to bring my focus on results, my independent judgment, and my constant focus on students to my service. At the end of the day, I want every Alameda student to be seen, supported, and challenged, no matter what their starting point, and to be prepared for a rapidly changing world. I've demonstrated that I'm committed to doing that work, and I would appreciate your support in the opportunity to continue to do so for the next 4 years.
Thank you. Mike McMahon.
Hi. Good evening, and thank you to the City of Alameda Democratic Club for hosting tonight's candidate forum. My name is Mike McMahon, and I'm running for the Board of Education. For more than 30 years, I've been involved in Alameda public education, including 12 years serving on the AUSD board. In 2012, we passed a bond that launched major facilities improvements throughout the district, including the historic Alameda High School. I maintained a website to keep the community forum informed about the board's work and district issues. And for 20 years, I've had the privilege of serving as treasurer of your club. These experiences have taught me the importance of transparency, responsible governance, and listening carefully to the community. I'm running to bring that experience to today's challenge and to help AUSD prepare thoughtfully for the future. The end.
Thank you. All right, and with that, I will turn it over to Sarah Putnam.
I'm not on the main screen. Hold on. Thank you to the Alameda Democratic Club for having me tonight. My name is Sarah Putnam, and I'm running for Alameda School Board. I'm a mother, an educator, and a disability rights advocate. I went through this school with an IEP. At age 15, I became the lead plaintiff in what was then the largest class action advocacy accessibility case in the United States, Putnam versus Oakland Unified School District, and we won. My oldest is an AUSD graduate with an IUP, and my youngest is an AUSD high school student with a 504 plan. I have experienced public education as a student, as an advocate, as an educator, and a parent. I know what our schools can accomplish when students receive the support they need. I also know how exhausting it can be when families must fight for it. Board decisions affect whether students have accessible classrooms, receive essential support, and feel included. They affect whether educators have safe and functional places to teach, and whether neighborhoods keep the schools, communities they've built. Over the last 10 years, Alameda voters have approved nearly $500 million for school buildings. That is a major public investment. People deserve to know what is being built, what it costs, and how those decisions were made. We should not have to be lawyers or budget experts to understand it. As a trustee, I will ask hard questions, review the facts, and follow up. I will help families and educators get the information that they need before decisions are final. I am asking for your endorsement and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, to the questions. Starting off with some of the recent board activity. Tell us about one recent board decision you agreed with and one you disagreed with. And for the one you disagreed with, what would you have proposed instead? And I'm going to start with Carrie.
I think it's pretty easy to say that the decision I'm most proud of and that there was unanimous agreement on was the contract agreement we reached with our educators and our employees this past spring. That required a lot of collaboration, partnership with our labor partners, and ultimately we came out in a place that was different from where both management and labor started, but I think uh, something that we were all really proud of. It's supportive of our employees, both their compensation, but also their health benefits. It's a 3-year agreement that allows us to avoid spending the next couple of years negotiating and actually working together to implement the teaching and learning strategies that we've been adopting at the board level. It's hard for me to identify places where I disagreed because the board has been quite aligned and working in close collaboration with each other. That doesn't mean there's not discussion and points of difference. There are times when I wanted to see more data. For instance, when we were naming the new field for Jet School, I'm sorry, for Jet's Field, we got some input from families and students that differed from some other data that we had seen. But those aren't points of disagreement, just places where we had discussion. I would love to continue to work with this board in this current configuration because I actually think we're making a lot of progress together.
Thank you. All right, Mike.
Given the fact that I'm not actively involved with going to board meetings anymore, I don't really have any particular case or disappointment in what the board has done recently. Certainly, the accomplishment of being able to negotiate the 3-year contract without having to go to a strike situation is certainly very successful, and they should be applauded for the work that they did. When I served for 12 years on the board, there were numerous disagreements and actions that we took. For example, there was a discussion around whether or not we should buy the existing facility for the district headquarters. I was the only one who advocated for buying it at the time. However, my other 4 board members disagreed with me, and it wasn't until later that the board finally figured out it was the most fiscally responsible action to take. So that's where I'm at.
All right, Sarah.
Well, since I haven't been on the board, I did look over some of the board decisions. And while I agree with the need to stop the strike and stuff, I did notice that it didn't bring any, Measure E didn't bring any new funding. It strung together the existing measures that were already in place. So I did want to say that that was a needed measure that would stop a strike from taking place, but it doesn't ultimately stop the ultimate strike from happening. And the labor negotiations are still going to ultimately happen, and so we need to figure out a long-term solution to this versus patting ourselves on the back because this is going to happen. And those measures, I'm sorry, not bonds, those measures did did expire. So what is going to take their place? So I do want to make sure that the board has something in place. So when this comes, I'm sorry, I'm getting flustered. When these contracts come about in 3 years, what are we going to do in the to make these things happen. They expired, and so we don't have anything in place before the voters. So this takes time. We have Measure B that was for facilities, but we don't have anything coming in for the enrichment programs to retain qualified employees. I'm very concerned about this.
All right, Joyce.
Sorry, turn my audio off. Well, I want to say I am noticing other than the current board members, I may be the only candidate here who's actually been attending board meetings virtually. So I can answer this question. So one of the things that I excitedly agree with, which is the work that's being done to do reading early intervention. And the point is that our students need to be reading by third grade. And so folks may have heard what's called the Mississippi Miracle. And I'm not saying the school district is implementing that, but I think they're taking some of the components of that, examining it, and seeing if it's right for the school district. So I'm very excited about that. One of the things that I've disagreed with is when the school district has received additional funding. So, for example, a COVID would be an example. And more recently, they talked about it, the more recent board meeting, that actually the state is going to give some additional money over what had already been budgeted. What I have noticed is that some of that one-time funding that they can't count on to come back is used to purchase things that are ongoing expenses and don't have any long-term support. So with COVID, the money was to be focused on repairing learning loss. I didn't see that focus happen with that money. It's again used for sort of ongoing expenses that then a year or two later have to be cut. So that's something that I think I bring, which is that strategic view, that budgeting view that says match how you spend the money with how long you have the money for. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for answering the questions. All right. You all talked a lot about the finance and the budget. So like most districts, and as some of you have seen in the meetings, AUSD faces quite a gap between ongoing cost and sustainable revenue. And there are a lot of real legitimate needs across students, families, educators, and staff. If you had to approve a budget that couldn't fund everything, what would you prioritize and what would you be willing to cut or delay? And why? And I'm going to start with Mike on this one.
Certainly, making sure that funding for the classroom teachers is the 1, 2, and 3 priorities that needs to be ensured that we continue to fund going forward. The biggest challenge California schools funding has is its reliance on the state funding mechanism that I've dealt with for over 30 years. Alameda was a district that was penalized based on the prior transition from Prop 13. Current new funding for the local control formula funding has helped that, but ultimately public education is going to ride or die based on the economy of the California economy. And as long as the tech boom continues, we'll be fine. When I first came onto the board in 2002, the dot-com crash caused us to have to redo everything, and it's not pleasant. So continue to support those tech people across the Bay as they are going to drive our budget surpluses. Thank you.
Sarah.
I would start with making sure that we're in compliance with all of our baseline IEP and 504 and ADA compliance, because when we are not adhering to compliance, we risk litigation. And when we risk litigation, we open ourselves up to major lawsuits. And I've seen that firsthand, that can bankrupt a school district. I also making sure that we're giving we're in compliance to those 504 and IEPs, so that we're giving firsthand, we have eyes on whether we're giving all those services. When we're giving all those services, we can keep our eyes on whether we're meeting the mental health services. We can keep our eyes on, if we're in communication with our teachers, we can see if there's any missing services within the families, that can help us, that ensure that we're not missing things that will lead us to having to exert costs, and that lead us into high dense. I'm sorry, I'm very frustrated, flustered. But these large costs can be mitigated if we start at the grassroots. We have to take care of our baselines here. When we ignore fundamental things like the HVAC systems in our schools, like Ruby Bridges and Payton Elementary, which we didn't do with Measure B. We took care of the fields. We took care of the theaters. When we don't do those things, we open ourselves to major issues. So we have to focus on our grassroots areas of the school district, and then we're going to save money ultimately and open ourselves up to having more money up the ladder.
Okay. I'm going to pivot a minute. Sarah and Mike, the second part of the question, is there something you would cut or delay?
I would put a hold on some of the bigger projects until we take care of the basics.
Okay. And Mike, can I go back to you? I don't think you answered what we would cut.
Not
Or
at this
delay.
time. I have nothing at this time.
Okay. Thank you to you both. I'm going to jump up to Joyce.
Well, and thanks for the tough questions here, Meredith.
Sorry.
So I was going to say, having been on the Parcel Tax Oversight Committee, I definitely spent some time with the budget. And, the school budget, the vast majority of the school budget is salaries, both for teachers, administrators, the classified staff, our maintenance crew, everybody who helps make it possible for the students. I have to also say that we have special education mandates that we must meet. Those are state, as Sarah said, there are certain things that you legally have to do. I also have a student who graduated and was a special education student. So I have been very immersed for his entire education into the special education department and seen the wonderful things about it, and also seen the inadequacies of it at times. So I think one of the things I would be interested in, so for example, on the Parcel Tax Committee, one of the things we looked at was we wanted data that told us things like, why are we having a 20% turnover in teachers in the first 5 years, right? What are the things we can do differently? Why are they leaving? So part of this is looking at data, where are we able to cut the cost of replacing teachers? When you ask about cutting, I'd want to cut the cost of turnover of teachers by looking at what's causing them to leave. Some of it sometimes is pay disparity between, even if the overall pay is matching other districts, which it's not always, you may have individual positions that don't match other districts. So that would be one. I'll add one last thing because my time's almost up, is I also think the investment, like Gary mentioned, in very high value partnerships that cost us a minimum amount, like working with the community college, for example, to provide for our students. Thank you. I'll stop.
Thank you, Joyce. All right, Carrie.
Yeah, thanks. So I think your question asked about the structural financial challenges, and I first want to just name that The structural challenges happen when our costs are rising faster than our revenues. And those happen on the operation side of the ledger, not on the facility side of the ledger. So we're not talking about bonds. In fact, our bonds don't have the same problem, and our community has been very generous with our bonds that have allowed us to build a beautiful new Wood Middle School. We're about to open the new Emma Hood High School. I think the conversation that gets us into the space of thinking about things like cuts is on the operating side of the budget. And the challenge is real. Just as Mike described, our school funding system in California is pegged against the state economy. As long as the stock market keeps rising, our schools do reasonably well. But we're in a really vulnerable position because we don't know when things are going to crash. The other thing that's true is that our costs are rising faster than the revenues, even though revenues have been going up. I just want to be clear that school funding is better in California than it ever has been. We should celebrate that. But we have additional costs. We just signed a terrific new agreement with our employees. We have increasing liability costs, healthcare costs, utilities, just like every American is experiencing these costs, so too is our district. So those costs are real, and we need to figure out how we balance everything. My first priority is always going to be protecting things that affect students in the classroom. Teaching and learning is what is most critical in our district, and so classroom instruction and the supports that are closest to students, including our students with disabilities, would be the things that I protect first. And then I'd look closely at programs and expenditures where the data don't suggest they're working. I don't think we need to cut just because we need to reduce the budget. I think we need to constantly reprioritize. I think that the conversation around cutting lands poorly for community members. They don't want to experience loss. I'm losing my program. I'm losing my teacher. I'm losing my class. They want to know that we're offering everything we can and we're being efficient and creative with our resources.
Great, thank you. All right, now we're going to shift gears from funding to talk about technology. What role do you think AI and other emerging technology should play in AUSD classrooms in the next few years? What does the district need to get right, and what should it avoid? And we're going to start with Sarah Putnam on this one.
Just give me a second.
Okay, yeah. It's definitely something that comes up among me and my network.
Completely.
You ready?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to speak from from the heart here. I think that AI has its place in the fact that as a person with a disability, it serves a lot of purposes. It can be a great tool, but when abused, it can be horrible. As you know, a person with an English background, it can be massively abused. But we need to limit how much, and we need to use it responsibly. At this point in time, there are no safeguards. We do not have any safeguards. The use of cell phones in our schools, and the use of something we need to be really aware of smart glasses in our schools and by our teachers as well as our students. I think that's something that hasn't been addressed as well, is that our staff and our teachers also have smartphones. So I think we also need to give some of that back to our some of that authority back to our teachers as well. I think when we're dictating to our teachers how to do that, we need to follow the rules and the laws that are dictated by our state and our school district. But we also need to give our teachers they have the eyes on our students. And we also need to use it responsibly. We need to have a closer examination of what's going on and encourage the, let's see, what did I think we also need to talk to the kids. We have. I went to a school board meeting last night, and we have three new high school board members, and I think they're really honestly the ones that we should be talking to. I think that's who has a really clear understanding. Okay, I'm going to leave it really quickly. I think we need to be talking to the students because they're a little more up to date on what's going on with technology than a lot of us.
Thank you. All right, Joyce.
All right. So I think that what we want for our students is we want our students to leave school being critical thinkers, right? So the world is constantly changing. There was the internet. At some point in the 50s, there was television, right there. But it's sort of the world is always changing. So I think when we think about AI, certainly I use AI in my job, right? Saves me time, does a lot of good things. We also know it does a lot of not so good things. So students are going to need to learn it, but they're going to also going to not use it to replace their critical thinking. So that is the thing when you talked about what to avoid. I don't want AI replacing what is that critical for the students. Also, I want to jump in here about cell phones because I know the district has a policy now where these cell phones are sort of being set aside during the classroom. And I wholeheartedly agree with that, right? I want to say something I thought we should even consider is what they're doing in New York, because what we're doing now gives the teachers one more duty to do. They're now the cell phone enforcers. In New York, the students come in, they have a bag that they keep that seals, and they then keep their cell phone, but it's sealed the entire day. And then when school is over, the bag opens up again. So now that's a way that the environment is shaping what happens rather than one more responsibility for our teachers. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, Carrie.
Yeah, a super important question. And our school district has assembled a task force to look at AI. In fact, I asked for a presentation from the district at our next board meeting on what they've been finding and what's coming out of that task force. So I do think it's really important that we have good data on how AI is being used in our schools, that we have feedback from educators, students, and families. Totally agree with that. It's going to be really important that we approach this thoughtfully and make it a priority at the board level over the next few years. I don't think that we can pretend AI doesn't exist. It's here. We need to wrestle with it. And when it comes to students, we need to really empower them. We need to teach them to be good consumers of AI, to bring good judgment to how it can inform their learning. We need to put guardrails in place, and we need to make sure that we're focusing on quality instruction. It is essential that our kids know how to struggle productively with learning. That is essential to learning. If they take shortcuts, if they ask AI for answers, they're not going to learn. And so we need to figure out how we prioritize that in our schools, which means talking to educators about how it shows up for them. My goal would be to create a space where we can talk about this as a community. I don't think there are any good answers, but we need to talk about the learning first and foremost, but also the other things that have been mentioned here: safety, privacy, data. All of those are essential to ensure that we've got the right guardrails, but also the right supports in place for our educators, students, and families.
Thank you. Mike.
I would just advocate or inform any person who's interested in what my platform is. They will see it both in my statement as well as my website that the only reason I'm really running is in order for the community to engage in this conversation around AI. It's going to take a minimum of 2 years to have a community-wide conversation around it. Technology should empower great teachers, not replace them. I'm looking for a community dialogue that would responsibly support students, educators, and families while addressing the concerns of privacy, equity, and impact on learning. The biggest challenge that I've seen in implementation of AI across the nation right now is the need to help educators change their practices as it relates to being able to focus on, as everybody said, critical thinking and learning as opposed to just focusing on getting the right answer. So until the community all engages in that conversation and is able to understand how and why and what and where and all the rest, we won't be able to make a positive step forward in terms of what we should do or not do. So that's my spiel.
Great, thank you. All right. We're going to shift gears again. AUSD's about equity and student outcomes. AUSD's mission emphasizes equity alongside excellence. Where do you see the biggest gaps in outcomes between student groups in this district? And what's one concrete step the board could take to close them down? And I'm going to start with back at the top with Joyce.
All right, thank you for asking this question. I think it's really critical because the school district has had initiatives over the last several years to try and address this, right? I think the board has taken it. I commend the board members. They have taken this very seriously. I have to say, though, they have not seen many academic results from what they have been doing, which is there's a gap with our Black students and Hispanic students performing lower in academics than their white and Asian students. And I do think that the current initiative I talked about earlier, which is early literacy intervention, I think that that's very data-driven in terms of having results in other places. So that is something I'm very excited about. And the idea of when students are falling behind, providing them tutoring, providing them the support they need in order to perform at a higher level. I think there was another part to your question. Did I answer that? Was there another piece to it?
No, you talked about
Okay.
what needed to be done, what you felt needed to be done to close them.
All
Yeah.
right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. All right, Carrie.
Yeah, we have to start by being really clear about what outcomes we're trying to improve and who is achieving at the level that meets our expectations. And Joyce is absolutely right. We've had gaps between our student groups, whether we disaggregate by students of color, students who are low income or not, students who are English learners or special education students. Across the board, we're seeing gaps by privilege. And we're seeing gaps between the West End and the East End of the island as well. So we need to be clear-eyed about all of those disparities, and we need to talk about the root causes of them. At the same time, we need to look at where we've made progress, and we have seen progress over the last few years in this district when it comes to early literacy and math. Our scores are increasing across the board, and so we need to celebrate what's working. At the same time, we need to double down, especially on those early literacy and math foundations that are so critical to learning in the later grades. We just adopted new English language arts curriculum. Having a new policy doesn't change outcomes. It's everything that happens with that curriculum in the classroom. So we need to support our educators to make sure they get the training and support they need to teach that curriculum. We need to supplement with novel studies and other engaging activities where we can. We need to make sure we are capturing good data and addressing where we see gaps. We've implemented tutoring initiatives in the district, and we need to continue that. There's a part of your question that I think is really important around equity and excellence. And I don't think we should have to choose between a public school system and an excellent school system. We need to serve our highest needs students in all the ways that we just described, but we also need to stretch. We need to hold high expectations for all students. Lowering expectations is not equity. High expectations and supports to help kids get there is what it looks like. That means challenging curriculum, meaningful, rigorous college and career pathways, access to those kind of courses, whether you live on the East End or the West End, and opportunities for kids to stretch into meaningful, creative pursuits. Things like dual enrollment and collaboration with our business and trade partners as well. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, Mike. Equity and excellence.
Mike, you're muted.
You're muted.
Over here. There it is. Got it. If you go back to my old website that I handcrafted from 2002 through 2010, I have a whole section on equity and excellence and all of the studies that have been things. I had to deal with 12 years of trying to enforce No Child Left Behind legislation that basically set those high targets, and we dealt with the consequences. The current progress that's being made by the district is laid out in their local control and accountability plan, and they've identified the same things that have been talked about in terms of the gaps. Their bottom line is that the biggest implementation risk is consistency. We need to improve inconsistent grading, instructional quality, school schedules, and family communication, behavioral practices, and mental health access and special education support are the ones that need to be focused on. Thank you.
All right, Sarah.
So, so Alameda Unified School District has already been identified as a disproportionately focus affecting Black students for special education. It was actually penalized by losing 15% of its special education funding. And it's actually lost that since 2019 to 2020, and it has not fixed that problem. That cost has been taken out of the general fund. That is a huge amount of money. So that's a huge way to fix one of these major problems. And this those students were being predominantly diagnosed with special needs, special education problems like ADHD when they didn't have them. So that's a huge problem. If we get that funding back into our special education funding out of our general fund, we'll have a lot more money to put back into our general fund. This would require school by school equity data. Sorry. And also facilities matter. We talk about that they're separate, but they're not. When a school on the west end doesn't have HVAC or proper plumbing or trees in its playground, that really does affect how students learn and how teachers feel about being at that school. Or when schools are being torn down and built up in these brand new things, or their neighborhood schools are being closed, that really does affect the morale. So this does really impact. I would suggest that a school by school equity dashboard showing outcomes for each group, what is being funded, and if that's working, and make it easy to access.
Thank you. Thank you all. All right, just a couple more and then we'll turn to closing statements. Some districts have faced disputes over how schools handle gender identity with students, including questions about parental notification when a student socially transitions at school. What do you think of AUSD's policy in this area and your view on how AUSD should balance student privacy and support with parents' feedback? And there is a state law in place too around this. So we are going to start with Carrie.
Yeah. As a board, of course, we're responsible for implementing state law, but and state law has been very supportive of our students with different gender identities, sexual orientation. At the same time, I am really proud of our leadership in Alameda, which has been very loud and clear that all are welcome in our schools, and we create a safe space regardless of how one identifies. I would continue to uphold that commitment on the board. I don't see it changing immediately, but you never know given the culture wars that are affecting our country. I think it's really important that we be steadfast as leaders, creating a safe space for all of our students.
Thank you. All right, Mike.
Not really nothing to add. The current board's actions, as well as the leadership of the entire district, has demonstrated its commitment to this process, especially with your board president, Ryan, taking the lead in this process for the last 4 years. I have nothing to add.
Sarah.
Well, as a parent of a trans child and a non-binary child, and as a member of the LGBTQ plus community myself, I am absolutely, and also at the front lines of having a parent who is, I've been marching in parades since I was barely able to walk. So this personally affects me, and I would be remiss to this is my community, these are my children, so I am in full support of any law. Of course I have to stand by that if elected on the board, but these are my children, so I would, of course, and these are my children's friends, this is my family, so I would be in complete support. This is a child that's currently in Alameda High, so I would be in complete support of that.
Of protecting students.
Protecting, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. All right, Joyce. Oh, you're on mute.
I apologize for that. I'm going to answer the question. I do want to add something to the prior question about equity and about the scores coming back up. That is true, but the scores dropped. During COVID, we had a lot of learning loss, and the scores have come up and come back to what they were now before COVID. So we haven't sort of been here and gone up. We went down, and now we've come back up. So I do want to note that. Now, to come to this question, as everyone has noted, the school district is following the law, as they should follow the law. And I also want to say that, one of my priorities is to have safe and welcoming schools, sort of whatever anybody's difference is. And I think as Sarah and I've mentioned, we both have special education student. That can also be an area where students can be marginalized, left out, bullied for that. So I think the school district, including making a safe space for students who are different in any way, for a gender identity, I think the district has done a very good job of making a safe place and of being supportive. And I would want to continue what they're doing, which is, as I said, a good job.
Thank you. All right. Last one, and a lot of you have already touched on it, but we're going to kind of encapsulate it, but it's about special education. The district has been working on more inclusive classrooms for students with disabilities. What's your view on how well AUSD is serving special education students right now, and what would you want to see change? And as I mentioned, a lot of you have touched on this already, so feel free to kind of revisit and elaborate. And Mike, we're gonna start with you.
This is a tough one for me, simply because when I served on the board, Alameda became known for providing actually special education services that attracted numerous parents from around the Bay Area to come to our district, which overpopulated the population representation within the school district. As a result, we've had severe challenges around that. I don't really have an answer to it. So like I said, I understand the challenges, but there's a yin and a yang to this process.
Okay, thank you. All right, Sarah.
Well, as a person who has a disability and has navigated the schools, and as a parent, I've actually personally called and toured the schools in the district. And I have called over and over and over again. And I have toured many of the schools, and the response I have gotten has been no return calls, and my child getting injured numerous times, and gotten no return calls. I have personal knowledge of what ADA compliance is, and the areas and the campuses that I was told through the bond that were going to be made accessible have not been. So inclusion means that a student's program from point A to point Z is made accessible. When it's not, that is exclusion. So I have not seen that happen. And when a 504 plan is not inclusive, when a child with heat intolerance is not having those needs met, they can't go to school. When they're missing school, it's not inclusive. I would love to say that things are up to ADA compliance, but I have not seen that to be the case. And when I have tried to contact the administrators, I have not received phone calls back, even in person. I have not received any communication as to when these things are going to be done. And I have not even heard who the ADA coordinator is, or the ADA compliance timeline as to when these things are going to be completed.
Joyce.
All right. I was going to say, as we said earlier, there are a number of mandates about what need to be provided, which I agree with, but without funding that matches those mandates. So it puts the school district in a very difficult position. Having been in the special education system, I have seen, you were talking about inclusive classrooms. I've seen when my children first started, there was more of a focus on, I think they're called special day classes, where you would have a separate class. Over time, they have moved to the inclusive classrooms. And I wish they did both, because there have been times when my children needed that special class. I'll give an example where my son in a younger grade needed that. And within 1 year, with a fantastic teacher, he moved up 2 grade levels in reading and math with that focus. And I found that more difficult for him in an inclusive classroom. But again, there have been times where a paraprofessional in the classroom, particularly one that he really clicks with, has meant that it's been a fabulous experience. So I think we've got to be flexible in what kids need at different ages, and not just say, we're going to do all mainstreaming, or you're only going to be in a separate place, because kids need different things at different ages and different times. I do want to say there has been a high level of turnover in the special education department. And I have to say, I'm back here with Sarah because I also took the school district to state mediation because of some of what they were not providing. So, I think, again, there has to be that focus on, you can't run a program if you have constant turnover in staff in that department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carrie.
Having been a parent in the district for the last 12 years, I've heard the concerns that Joyce and Sarah have raised. And I think we all have to acknowledge that there are parents who are frustrated. And having been on the board for the last 10 months, I can see also the progress and the effort that's going into addressing those concerns. And so when your question was like, how is the district doing? I think the district is putting in the work in a really tough situation for the reasons that Joyce described. There are some indicators that things are moving in a good direction. We have, in the last few years, reduced our overdue assessments and our due process filings. We have expanded training for paraprofessionals. We have filled some empty positions and boosted our internal capacity in special education. that all creates the opportunity to provide better, more responsive services for students. And I want to acknowledge that making the investments and building that infrastructure is not the same thing as actually creating those inclusive experiences. And so we need to do a lot more to make sure we are recruiting and retaining excellent special education teachers, strengthening collaboration between special ed and general ed teachers so that that inclusion actually happens and people know how to do it. And we also need to continue listening to our special education teachers and our students in our special education families to understand what's working and what's not. There is a refrain that I've heard from families in the community that sometimes it feels like they're talking to a brick wall, and we need to address that. We can't solve all of these challenges if we continue to put up a wall between the district and families. The other challenge is that there's just a shortage of special education folks out there. We need to talk about working conditions for special educators. We need to make this a district where they want to work. We need to build partnerships with universities and local teacher prep programs to ensure that we're training people and bringing them into the profession in the first place so that we're not relying on contractors. We are having to bring in contractors to serve student IEPs. That's creating a fiscal hit, but that's also reducing services and relationships. So we need to talk about that as well.
Thank you. Yes, Sarah.
Can I clarify one point? Is
that you made or that another board member made?
That I made.
Okay. Yeah.
Clarity into I was never in the special education department. I'm what they term, and so is my daughter, is a mainstream disabled student. So that's a different category. So we were always in the mainstream school throughout the entire program. So it makes the entire program have to be accessible.
Thank you. All right. Well, we'll turn it over to closing remarks. And I'm sorry, I realize we're running a couple minutes over. Thank you for your patience to the candidates who are waiting for transit, who are waiting on the line. 1 minute closing, and we are gonna start with, I lost where we are. I think we're starting with Sarah. All right, 1 minute.
Okay. Some of you know me as Sarah Hinckley and others as Sarah Putnam. You may remember me as a preschool teacher, a nanny, a PTSA member, or a NIA parent, a member of the LUM community, a Love member community, Maya Lynn and Sanel, or Alameda High member, or a student of the College of Alameda. My family's roots begin here in 1910, a family generation of 5 generations. But my connection to this community is not only begins with what I inherited. Alameda families trusted me to care for their children, and I have watched many of them grow up and graduate and go off to college. This campaign is not the beginning of my commitment to Alameda. Win or lose, I will continue advocating for your children and families and making good choices for Alameda. I am asking to serve in a new way, bringing the perspective of a parent who has navigated through an IEP and the 504 system and the determination to keep pushing for results. I am ready to put those experiences to work on the AUSD board. I would be honored to have your endorsement and your vote.
Thank you. All right, Joyce. Oh.
Got to unmute myself. So I'll close with why this election matters to me. So I've spent more than 20 years volunteering in Alameda schools, a parent, PTA volunteer, and a community member who's seen both the strengths of our district and the challenges our families face. I'm running because I believe we can do better for every student and because I believe my experience can make a difference. I bring the perspective of a parent and a longtime school volunteer and my professional experience with policy, strategic planning, and budgeting. But most importantly, I bring a real commitment to Alameda's children and their future. Our students have just one chance to get the education they deserve. We owe them schools that prepare them to succeed, teachers who are supported, and a district that uses its resources widely. I would be honored to have your support and to work with you to make Alameda School even stronger. Thank you, and I would like your vote and your endorsement.
All right, Carrie.
Yeah, thank you. I'm running for a full term because I believe our students deserve schools that are excellent, and we need to build an equitable system. Excellence and equity can coexist, as we've talked about today. I am already doing this job, and I believe I've demonstrated that I'm the right person to keep doing it. Each of my board colleagues has supported me, which I think says something. We know the team is functioning at a high level, and we would like the opportunity to continue the work we're doing together. As just an example, board member Gary Lim, who's on the ballot as well, and I are committed, if reelected, to continuing to expand our partnership with Peralta to create more dual enrollment opportunities so more students can earn college credit even before they graduate from high school. We'd also like to expand career pathways for our high school students. I'm proud to have been endorsed by our teachers, our classified employees, the Building Trades Council, the Alameda firefighters, and others. Those endorsements, I think, reflect the relationships that I've been building with labor partners and the trust we've developed. I have come to learn the challenges facing our district. We need to improve academic outcomes. We need to make sure every student is seen and supported. And I believe we can do all of that while maintaining high expectations. So I'd be honored to continue to serve in this capacity, and I would be grateful for your support.
Thank you. All right, Mike.
I'm running because I believe ASUD needs experienced leadership, thoughtful conversations, and responsible governance. My 30 years of involvement in Alameda public education and my 12 years on the board have taught me that the lasting progress requires more than good intentions. It requires listening, clear priorities, fiscal responsibility, and follow through. Today, schools face important questions about student achievement, educator support, mental health, equity, and artificial intelligence. Technology should empower great teachers, not replace them. I would advocate for a community-wide dialogue about how artificial intelligence can be used responsibly to support students, educators, families, while addressing concerns about privacy, equity, and impacts on learning. I would be honored to earn your support and continue serving Alameda students, families, educators, and the community.
Great. Well, thank you all. We had many, many more questions, as you can imagine, but could only fit in so many. We know your time is very valuable. We also recognize how much time, effort, and commitment it is to even run for office. So thank you all four of you, all five of you, to Gary too, for putting your name forward. We really appreciate it. All right. So thank you so much. We're going to shift gears and talk about transit. All right. And thank you so much to Joel and Adriana for your patience. Sorry, we ran actually several minutes over. There he is. All right, and with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to my colleague, Jen Heflin-Witt. You'll get to hear her lovely voice for the next 30 minutes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Heflin-Witt, and I'm the program coordinator for the Alameda Democratic Club. And I'm going to be asking you guys some questions. So we have two amazing candidates for the AC Transit Board of Directors for Ward 3, which encompasses Alameda, Oakland, and Piedmont. The AC Transit Board members are responsible for overseeing the operations and policies of the AC Alameda Contra Costa Transit District, which includes making decisions on budget, service improvements, and community engagement. They also represent the interest of their constituents and ensure the public transit services meet the needs of the community. Board members play a crucial role in shaping transit policy and funding. So just a little bit of housekeeping. You will have 2 minutes to answer. My colleague Meredith is going to hold up two signs, one that says 30 seconds, so you have 30 seconds, and one that says stop. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. And we'll start with Adriana. And could you please tell us who you are and why we should vote for you?
Absolutely. City of Alameda Democratic Club, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to have this opportunity to share my thoughts, tell you about who I am, and learn about your questions. My name is Adriana Valencia, and I am a lifelong transit rider. I don't actually know how to drive. I've got amblyopia, terrible depth perception. It would be terrible. Anyhow, I'm a lifelong transit driver rider. I grew up right outside of New York City, where I took New Jersey Transit 163, 164, both to and from high school and to and from New York City. Came to the Bay Area in 1998 for graduate school, and I've been calling Oakland home ever since. I'm a mom to an Oakland Unified School District student, volunteer extensively both at his school with cycling initiatives, and I've served on the board of the Temescal Telegraph Business Improvement District. And I'm running for AC Transit Ward 3 because I believe that I can bring my commitment to riding transit and empathy for riders, my professional background, which comes from education with a PhD in architecture, but I've been working in product and program management ever since, most recently at a company that makes PDF collaboration software for architecture, engineering, and construction. And I think my energy about transit to the role. And yeah, I take transit all around this ward, and I would be delighted to serve.
Thank you, Adriana. All right, Joel, can you please tell us who you are and why we should vote for you?
My name is Joel Young. I am actually on the AC Transit Board, currently in the at-large seat. AC Transit is an important public service. I know that because I grew up transit dependent here in the Bay Area, and I still take the system to this day. Transit generally is at an inflection point within this region. There are financial issues called the fiscal cliff associated with every single transit agency. This is not just an issue for the Bay Area, it's an issue nationally for all transit agencies. So we have an impending election that in November, with respect to the sales to the regional sales tax measure, that's going to determine a lot with respect to what AC Transit can and can't do. Transportation generally, though, is also under significant technological change. I know in the prior discussions, they were talking about AI. Well, in transportation, what you're seeing is that there's an AI integration going on. There's a zero emission transition going on. And then there's an autonomous vehicle rollout that's happening across this world. The transit agency that you see today is not going to be the transit agency that you see 10 years from now, 20 years from now. It's going to be substantially different. I think the question that you all as voters have to figure out is who is best to guide AC Transit on this path. In addition to being an AC Transit board member, I was selected to be chair of the American Public Transit Association. This is the association that represents all of the transit agencies of America. I'm currently leading the dialogue with respect to this technological change, and I plan on bringing that back to AC Transit and have already done so. So thank you for your time and giving me the opportunity to address you this evening. And more importantly, thank you for accommodating my schedule this evening. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you so much. I think we'll just go back and forth for every question. So Joel, you alluded to it in your introduction, but regarding Measure RTM, your transit is facing a projected $50 million annual operating deficit this coming year, and a loan from the state covers only one more year. Do you support the Bay Area Connect Measure RTM on the November ballot, and why should Alamedans vote for this multi-county sales tax?
Great question. Yes, I support the ballot measure. I'm actually the only board member in the region to be selected to participate on the ballot measure committee. This is why it's important for the city of Alameda. You guys are an island. You have limited ingress, egress onto the island, and you don't have significant access to BART. So if the sales tax measure does not pass, we're going to have to do a significant service reduction, which would likely result in trans-bay service being eliminated because that's the sort of least demand service that we have, right? And so immediately you'd be looking at frequency reductions on the island. And so your commuters who are taking the O and the W would probably have the first to lose. Then we would have to make a determination as to whether or not we could continue to provide the service on the 19, which goes up Buena Vista to the new developments there, as well as the 96, which goes into sort of the West End where they're having potentially new development as well. Those lines would potentially be on the chopping block because we would have to look at all the lines without the entire system and look at the demand for those lines. If Alameda believes in transportation, and I know they do because I know your mayor is a big transit activist and writer of AC Transit. She's also endorsed me for this campaign. If Alameda wants to have significant transportation on their island, then they need the sales tax measure to pass.
Great, thank you. Adriana, please go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, to reiterate the question, it's whether or not I support Measure RTM, the sales tax.
Yes.
And the answer is absolutely yes. Sales taxes are by their nature regressive, but given the fiscal cliff, given the fact that AC Transit has gone into their reserve money and the ending of federal COVID funding, this really is the only way forward. Essentially, if Measure RTM, the Connect Bay Area measure, does not pass, there is going to be a death spiral in transit for the Bay Area. AC Transit projects 16% reduction in service, but BART projects 70% reduction in service. So that connectivity, that intermodal connectivity, that evaporates right there. And then you instantly get less demand because BART's going every 30 minutes instead of every 10. You have, for Alameda, you have worse transportation to BART. And then the next thing you know, we're going to have bumper to bumper traffic and it's going to be terrible. So yes, I absolutely support this. I do think that it is the last best option because a far better option would be for public transportation to get funding directly from Sacramento, the federal government. If 10% of the money that, let's say from the gasoline tax goes to highways, went to public transportation, we could have abundant transportation. We could have a system in which you don't actually have to know the schedule because you just get to show up and your bus, your ferry, your train comes and you don't have to think about the schedule. But we're facing a situation which BART stops running at 9 p.m., which would be absolutely devastating. So the transit measure must pass.
Agreed. Thank you so much. So next question. Like many transit agencies since the pandemic, AC Transit has had a difficult time hiring and retaining bus operators. Driver shortages have forced services cut at agencies nationwide. What is your assessment of AC Transit, the fleet staffing, and what would you do about recruitment and retention? Adriana, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Joel.
Yeah, I would like to acknowledge that I am an outsider to the agency at this point. I would like to serve on the agency. So this is purely speculative. But my understanding is that many bus drivers are coming from far away to a role where they are, let's say being sent on runs where they are not given enough time for anything other than the ideal run. If somebody with a wheelchair gets on, if somebody who is lost or needs more time gets on the bus slows down. And then the drivers, they lose break time. They lose time to go to the bathroom. I've interviewed a couple of drivers and I've spent time talking to every driver I've encountered, as long as it's safe. But what I've heard is that, for example, one driver showed up at, I believe it was 40th and San Pablo in Oakland, to wait for the bus that he was going to drive next. And he found out when the people waiting for the same bus did that bus had been canceled. And he told me that if somebody had communicated with him as soon as they knew the bus was canceled, he could have gone to the depot to get the replacement bus for him to take over, but that communication is failing. And so there are many ways in which the agency is failing the drivers operationally. And and I think in terms of respect for their roles, and in terms of like the dignity that they deserve to have as people who do a valuable community service.
Thank you. Joel?
So competition for drivers is incredibly competitive, not just nationally, but here in the Bay Area. So we have agencies, Muni, VTA, Samtrans, Tri-Delta, LAFTA, all competing for the same pool of drivers. So how do you attract and retain drivers? First, it's with respect to compensation. So drivers have to be well compensated. We were able to give our drivers and make our wages more competitive within the region within this last year, which should help retain drivers. We also have to recognize that AC Transit, there's what's going on as the silver tsunami, as they say, where we're seeing a lot of retirements with respect to drivers. So our general manager is focused on hiring and bringing in new classes of drivers. In fact, I just saw a LinkedIn post with 20 new drivers that we're adding. We're continuing to do that. Unfortunately, though, because of the competitiveness, it's hard to maintain the number of drivers that you need in order to operate 100% of service. But we certainly are trying to do it, and we'll continue to do it. And I'm optimistic that we will get there in terms of having the right size of our driver population very soon, in light of the fact that we just changed our service levels and reduced the amount of service that we're providing, which will help with respect to ensuring that all the service that's operated is out there. And we're currently very close. So it's not like we're operating a significantly less, not a significantly low portion of our service. We're there now, but obviously it can be better.
Great, thank you. Now onto a question that many of us in Alameda have. So Alameda is an island with few crossings. Where do we fall on the priority list of frequency and coverage? Given that we have 3 ferry terminals to get bus commuters around the bay, when can we get the bus line back to the Seaplane Lagoon? And can we? How do we get that to happen?
Well, who's going first? Am I going first?
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, who started the question last time? Was it you?
I did.
So
Joel should go first.
So let's talk about, there's sort of 3 issues within your question.
Yes.
With respect to geographical coverage, I actually think that Alameda, with respect to transit and AC Transit, has the geographical coverage that's necessary to serve the people of Alameda. With respect to frequency now, that's sort of an issue that has been raised by Alamedans over the years, trying to increase frequency of service, because some of your routes are 30-minute headways, potentially an hour headways. And so that is something that I think the city of Alameda could benefit from, is with increased frequency on certain lines. The 51 is our bedrock of our agency, and so you have frequent service there. It's sort of like the 19, the 96, the 30, the 31, where the frequencies aren't there. As the city of Alameda, though, starts to develop, particularly on Buena Vista and Atlantic Avenue, and those new developments that are happening over there and in the West End, I think it will be time to revisit the frequency and make a determination as to whether or not it should be increased. Let's talk about the ferry service. We did have a pilot program that went to the ferries. Unfortunately, as we were evaluating the pilot program, the director who currently represents your area didn't really fight for that service. And as a result of that, the service got eliminated as we were evaluating the pilot projects. I know this is top of mind for the mayor because I hear from her all the time. I know this is top of mind for Alamedans in terms of bringing back the service to the terminals. And I am committed to doing that when I become your sole representative.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joel. Adriana?
Yeah, so I've been doing a listening tour of Alamedans because I want to learn more about the relationship of this island, which has great bicycle infrastructure, by the way, with the larger area, with the ferry, with Oakland, with Fruitvale BART. As someone who's ridden my bike through the Posey Tube, it is harrowing, and I wish that there were a bus that would just go back and forth between the two. That's a side note, and my own, personal interests. But one thing that I have repeatedly heard is we need buses that go all the way to the ferries. And one of the things that someone called out was, well, there was a pilot program at some point, but that was before the ferry service was there. So the buses were going to where the ferries would be, but there were no ferries. And then what I've understood is that when it was determined to not have buses to the ferries, it's because there wasn't enough ridership. But I think, well, there would be enough ridership if the buses went all the way to the ferries. I personally am a really big believer in intermodal, communications, so that people in Alameda shouldn't have to go to the Fruitvale BART to get to San Francisco. They should be able to, without having to walk, I think it's like 7 blocks right now, they should be able to get to the ferry to get to San Francisco. And, my understanding is that, the seaplane ferry is the one that goes directly to San Francisco without stopping in Oakland first. So that's the one that would be to optimize for. I think in terms of other lines and connectivity, I took the 51 from Fruitvale BART to Rockridge BART the other day, and it kind of does the grand tour of Alameda, which honestly doesn't seem terrible, but it is a little long. My understanding is that the 19 could possibly be optimized a little bit. I will stop now.
Thank you. Thank you. So AC Transit is nationally recognized for its low emission bus fleet, but the electrification is more expensive and battery powered buses tend to be out of service more. How do you balance between speeding up the switch to electric buses and climate goals with keeping current bus routes and schedules running? We'll start with you, Adriana, and then we'll go to Joel.
Yeah. Again, I want to flag that I'm answering as an outsider who does not have experience in bus procurement. And I want to flag that my understanding, and this is a surface level understanding at best, but something I would be delighted to research and understand more and dig into, is that, A, there are trade-offs. B, bus procurement takes a really, really long time in terms of, contracts and projections and actually getting the fleet there, and that the funding for the bus procurement is it comes from these really huge grants that are also take many, many years to get. So and again, I want to flag that this is a superficial understanding at best at this point, is get as many buses that are as low emission as possible and replace the fleet in a gradual way with ideally some sort of larger fleet acquisition at some point when it's viable. I do think that right now the bigger question is fiscal cliff and service cuts and keeping a level of reliability, like actually getting to a level of reliability that's been missing, rather than electrification. But I do hope that with all of the advances in electric vehicles that are happening generally, that what this means is that within 5 years, a decade, going fully electric will be an absolute no-brainer, because the battery storage capacity will be there, vehicle life and maintenance will be better, and there will be all these advancements.
Thank you. Joel?
I was actually nominated to be on President Biden's bus manufacturing task force, and I've given lectures on this issue. So the question has a lot in there, and so we could talk about it for 30 minutes. The bottom line is there's only 2 bus manufacturers left in the nation, right? Gillig and New Flyer. Gillig and New Flyer both make electric buses, and then New Flyer makes fuel cell buses on top of electric buses. AC Transit has already conducted a study with Stanford University to evaluate whether or not to evaluate which technology makes sense for the district. And based on that study, we've determined that fuel cell technology is better than battery electric buses for the Bay Area. For our agency, I should say. The reason why fuel cell buses are better than battery electric buses is because of the range of the buses, right? The battery electric buses don't go that far. They don't travel far enough without needing a charge. And so as a result of that, the buses would have to go back to the divisions to be charged. Then you have issues with respect to the charging of a fleet overnight and the complexities of charging that fleet overnight and ensuring that all buses are fully charged before pull out in the morning. Whereas with fuel cell buses, they are fueled within 5 minutes, just like a normal diesel bus. But irrespective of all of that, you've seen the Trump administration back off on capital investment grants. And so they're not giving those for zero emission vehicles in this region. So that's setting us back. And then the cost of the buses are just astronomical right now. So a fuel cell bus or a battery electric bus can cost you well over $1 million, 1.5 million. And so the state has sort of placed this unfunded mandate on the agency. And when the state and the federal government really want to step up and fund us and the other transit agencies within the region and the state, then I think you will be able to see a transition. But until that, it's going to be really difficult. And I wish I could go on for more, but I'll leave it at that.
Great. Thank you so much for that background. So last question, and then we'll wrap up. So buses are a lifeline for people who have disabilities and the elderly. What improved plans do you have for improving these facilities, this transportation as you kind of move forward? And Joel, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Adriana.
So let's talk about that. Obviously, in the short term, our agency and every agency in the region is just trying to ensure that the lights stay on. And then once we get a determination with respect to what happens to the regional measure, then we can sort of figure out some of those long range planning issues that you sort of addressed. But in my opening comments, we talked about the inflection point for transit. There is significant technological change that's going to happen. And when that happens, that is going to be a significant improvement in transportation for seniors, for people with disabilities. So let me give you an example. I was invited to on an international study mission because of my role as chair of the American Public Transit Association. We got to go to Seoul, South Korea. In Seoul, they have the desire to be the smart mobility city of the world by 2030, which means that they're going to be rolling out they have plans of rolling out a full autonomous fleet by that time. Autonomous vehicles, when they roll out in America, and they're currently in Jacksonville, when they roll out across America, it's going to provide significant opportunity for seniors and disabled people and all transit riders because there's going to be that much more service for people. AC Transit, the transit agencies of the region, have to figure out what role they're going to play within this transformation because the transformation has a lot of potential impact and significant improvement, but you have to be careful, right? Foothill, you asked earlier about an agency about the zero emission transition. Foothill Transit down in Southern California made the goal of being the first fully battery electric transit agency in America. They got out in front, and guess what? It proved to be a horrible mistake because the technology just wasn't ready. We have to be careful with respect to how we approach this transition. And I see my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you. Adriana?
Yes, Jen, could you repeat the question so that I hit on the correct points?
Yes. So what are plans to improve accessibility for elderly disabled riders in Alameda and across all AC Transit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to talk about a couple of very small details right now. And these are things that, I'm not going to talk about the giant like shift to AI and autonomous vehicles and all of that, but I'm going to talk about really small tactical things that I believe can improve the experience for people who may not have either full mobility, full vision, or anything. Which is right now, if you are at a stop and you have to call the number, you call like whatever I think it's 511, and then you have to enter your stop number, and then finally you go through all these menus, and really really slowly it finally tells you something like there's going to be a bus in 3 minutes, and then you go, no there's not, I can see 6 minutes down the road and the bus isn't here. And I think that like actually using the technology we have today, getting real-time location of buses and having either a text or audio based system that does not require that many interactions, so that you can get actual information about your real-time bus, would be a really really huge difference, in terms of like actual lived experience. I also think that like I have seen lots of kids, like I've been on a packed 51A pass, by Oakland Tech when it's still been in drop off only mode, but a couple of kids have gotten off and they let us on. And I've seen the kids like not let people who are obviously elderly and not as mobile sit where they should. So I think, possibly some education, possibly some enforcement, because I think a lot of the time it's little details that really improve an experience. Possibly also, I don't know, either tactile maps or better, or possibly even, oh, sorry, I'll stop now, but I've got ideas. Thank you so much for listening, Meredith and Jen.
Thank you, Adriana. All right, so we'll wrap up. So please give just a quick 1 minute wrap up of what you want to say and why we should vote for you. Go ahead.
I'll start. Meredith and Jen and City of Alameda Democratic Club, again, thank you so much for having me here to talk with me, to hear about my ideas and my thoughts. And I want to be transparent that I don't have experience running a transit agency, but I have a lot of experience riding transit. I have a lot of experience doing research, and I have a lot of experience understanding really complex systems and shipping complex digital products to millions of users, on time, under budget, iteratively, and understanding more and more to improve upon that user experience. I can't hear you, Meredith. Sorry. Okay. I really think that taking the bus is, it's got community at its core. There's human connection there. And I think that I can bring a deep empathy for the rider, curiosity about how our really exciting and vibrant, like East Bay urban area works. And I can bring the energy that it takes to improve the service. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adriana. Joel, 1 minute, please.
I'm giving a big speech in about a month to the entire transit industry in Chicago as I accept the nomination to be chair of the American Public Transit Association. And before I accepted that position, I had to think about why. What's my why? Why am I doing this? And I settled on, and it came to me very quickly. It's about the power of public transit to change people's lives. Public transit is incredibly important service. AC transit is incredibly important service. And I truly believe in that mission. But as one of the candidates for school board indicated, he said, good intentions doesn't get it done, right? You need leaders who actually get it done. And I am a leader on the AC Transit Board. I'm doing things that no board member has ever done. Leading the entire transportation industry, selected by President Biden to participate in national task force. I've brought home $45 million, me, myself, as a transit board member, back to the agency for our zero emission program. These are things that no other board member in the history of AC Transit has ever done. That's why a majority of my board is endorsing me. That's why the mayor of Alameda is endorsing me. That's why you should also be supporting this campaign. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you so much. We want to just give a round of applause for our candidates, like a silent one. And we want to say thank you so much. We know it's hard to run for office, and we really appreciate your public service. And thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.